Iggeres Hakodesh Gimel is the first one on tzedakah, and here is the second one on tzedakah. Because the Alter Rebbe was, good morning, because the Alter Rebbe was raising money for the Jews who moved, the Chassidim who went from Russia to Eretz Yisrael in the late 1700s and the early 1800s, and there wasn't any economy, there wasn't anything. So the Alter Rebbe was sending them money. Of course, his own teacher and elder colleague, one of the students of the Maggid, was Reb Mendel of Haradok, known as Reb Mendel Vitebsker, and he led that aliyah of Yidden from Russia to Eretz Yisrael. Part of the reason was because of all the persecution they were having from the Misnagdim, so they moved away. And the Alter Rebbe was raising money for them, and later on, Iggeres Hakodesh actually, number 27, is actually the Alter Rebbe's famous letter of condolence when Reb Mendel Vitebsker passed away. He's buried in Tveria. Okay, so therefore, a lot of the letters that he wrote, which we call, the translation, they call them epistles. They're not just letters; they're deep teres, explaining the virtue of tzedakah in general and of tzedakah to Eretz Yisrael in particular. And that charity, known as Keil Chabad, that the Alter Rebbe started then, is still going till this very day. It's the oldest tzedakah in Eretz Yisrael, which is still functioning to this very day in a very, very big way, to the point where the modern day Israeli government uses and works through Keil Chabad in order, when they need to do, even now during the pandemic over the last 10 months and various other instances beforehand where they want to reach a larger population, they go through the offices of Keil Chabad because they have the facilities for it. All founded by the Alter Rebbe. Okay, so we're up to Iggeres Dalet on page Kuf Hey. As I said earlier, we're skipping Gimel. It's quite mystical, that letter, so we're going to move on to letter Dalet. We're not going to be doing all 32 letters. We're going to do the ones that I think I'm capable of understanding. So we're up to Dalet, which is on page Kuf Hey. Okay. So it begins with a quote from the Rambam. Ein Yisrael negolin elo b'tzedakah. That Yisrael will be redeemed only by virtue of tzedakah. As it says, Shenemar v'shoveha b'tzedakah. The pasuk says, the famous pasuk that we read in the Haftarah of Shabbos Chazayin, in the division of Tanya according to the year in Chitas. This section of Dalet is the shir for Tisha B'Av. And the pasuk that the Haftarah of Shabbos Chazayin ends with is the famous pasuk of Tzion b'mishpat tipada, that Tzion will be redeemed with mishpat, with studying the law, v'shoveha b'tzedakah. What's v'shoveha? Shoveha can come from the word shav, which means to return, meaning those who are returning, the returners. Or v'shoveha can mean shivya, the captives. So that those who are captive or those who are returning will be repatriated. How? Or shall be redeemed b'tzedakah. Tzedakah is tzedek. So tziyah b'mishpat tipada v'shoveha b'tzedakah. So it is this tzedakah which brings about this geula that he's talking about. Ein Yisrael negolin ela b'tzedakah, because v'shoveha b'tzedakah. So to understand this ksiv, he brings another pasuk from Tehillim. Tzedek lefanav yahalech, that tzedek shall go before him, before God. Tzedek means righteousness, justice, correct, that which is correct. Later the Alter Rebbe explains that that's the meaning of the word tzedakah. We translate tzedakah as charity, but what tzedakah really means is correct and justice, the right thing. So it's not just that we give tzedakah because we're kind and charitable, but that in fact is the correct thing to do. Like it's correct, and to do certain laws, certain things, you stop at a red light, and certain things which is the proper and correct thing to do. Giving tzedakah is not just an extra, but that is part of the tzedek and yesher, the morality that the Eibishter put into the world. So, ksiv tzedek that tzedek, righteousness, shall go before him. So the question the Alter Rebbe poses is, It should have said Yelech. Now, Yelech is, Mahalach means to cause to go. Yelech means goes. Right? So, Tzedek Lefon of Yahalech seems to imply that tzedakah shall cause others to go before him. When it seems to be the simple pshat of the pasuk, meaning of the pasuk is that tzedek goes before Hashem. So it should have said Yelech, not Yahalech. We get to that question later on at the end. So this will be understood based on a different pasuk. This is the style of many times in Chassidus, where it starts with one thing, goes to another pasuk, and to understand this, let's go to a completely different pasuk. And then from there, sometimes we go to a fourth place too. The understanding will be explained based on a pasuk in Tehillim, L'cho Malibi Bakshu Paneh. That's a pasuk familiar. That's a pasuk in L'David Hashem Eini, which we say in the month of Elul every day. So in that chapter of Tehillim of chapter 27, L'cha Malibi, to you my heart says, Bakshu Paneh. Seek, search. Bakshu means to request, to search Paneh for my face. So the simple meaning is, to you my heart, L'cha Malibi, to you my heart says, Bakshu Paneh, search my face. In other words, this is the Eibishter talking to Yidden. The Eibishter is asking us to search for him. Or it could be, L'chom alibi, in your behalf, in the Eibishter's behalf, my heart says, search me, search for me, search for my face. Pirush Bakshu, what does it mean? What does it mean to search for the Eibishter's panim, for the Eibishter's face? The Eibishter has a face. Pirush Bakshu Pnimius Halev. Panim doesn't necessarily mean face. Panim means Pnimius, which means inwardness. And Bakshu Paneh means search for the Pnimius of the Eibishter. Search for the inwardness of the heart. Bakshu, not the Pnimius of the Eibishter, but Pnimius Halev. L'chom alibi, that in other words, the Alter Rebbe is giving a new interpretation here, that my heart is telling me, search for the Pnimius of me, of the heart. What does it mean? He's going to tell us there's different levels that we relate with our heart. And our heart wants us to find the Pnimius within the heart. As we'll explain that, it will become clear. Bakshu Pnimis Alev. What is that? Kihine belav Yisayda Eish or Lekisha belev. Lav, in the flame of Yisayda Eish. We learned at the very beginning of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that everything consists of it consists of the four elements which the world was created. Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Ofer. Fire, and wind, and water, and dust. So everything has that. Not just on a physical level, he says, but on a spiritual level as well. He explained how those four spiritual things apply in Klippa, right? In chapter 1, and Perek Aleph of Tanya did that. And they exist in Kedusha as well. So what is the Yesod of Eish? What is the element of Eish in the heart? So the element of Eish in the heart is Lav, is this fire. Which fire? Lav Yesod Eish Holikis Shebelev. This element of divine fire which there is in the heart. Meaning that within the heart of every person, of every Yid, there's a neshama, and it has this passionate love for the Eibishter, as we'll see. Where does this love come? It comes from the element of fire. Fire is hot, is heat, is passion, symbolizes passion. Alter Rebbe explained that in Perek Gimel. Nusach Acher, there's a different version of how the Alter Rebbe wrote this. Hini b'halev yesod ha'eish lekis shebelev, where he says, for in the heart, the Yesod, the element of fire, of the godly fire, Shebelev. So in this passion that there is in the heart, the heart is the seat of our passion towards anything. And in this case, we're talking about the passion towards a likus. So in this fire in the heart, which is the passion towards a likus, Yishbeis Pchinis. There's two levels or two aspects to this love and passion in the heart. There is a external and an internal, a superficial and a, what's opposite of superficial, and a deeper level of love to the Eibishter. Chitzenius and Pnimius. What are they? Chitzenius Alev, he slavos. The chitzenius of the heart, the external, superficial part of the heart, is the hislavos, the excitement. Hamislaheves, hislavos, the root is lav, the flame. A flame is always moving, doesn't stay in one place. So the hislavos is the verb for lav. In other words, that constant excitement towards the likus. In this case, the hislavos can be to many things. Something that not just you want and like, but something that you're passionate about is called hislavos. So chitzenius alev, in this case, we're talking about the chitzenius alev in its relationship with the Eibishter, is the hislavos. Hamislaheves, where does the hislavos come from? Where do I get excited or excitement with the likus, with God? It comes very straightforward. It comes from the levels of bina and das, meaning using our minds in Gdulas Hashem Yitzchak Baruch Hu, in understanding and knowing the greatness of the Eibishter. So the more we learn and understand and appreciate the greatness of the Eibishter, the result of that will be a greater excitement of the heart towards the Eibishter. That, he says, is chitzenius halev. Lizbeinin b'gdulasai, by meditating on the Eibishter's greatness, and from that, ulahaylid mitvuna zu, to give birth from this tvuna, from this understanding, this bina, ava azba aza kerish be'esh v'chol. Not just an ahava, not just a love, but an ava aza, an intense love, a very strong love, compared to kerish be'esh, like the love that's described in Shir HaShirim, a love of rish be'esh. Again, if you remember in Likutei Amorim, in the first section of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe over there explained different types of love. More passionate, less passionate, in different names. Ava Rabo, Ava Betanugim, Ava Kirish Be'esh. These are all common terms in Chassidus Chabad, different levels of love. So he's saying that what comes, the love that's generated from a meditation and understanding of using what he says, one's bina and das to understand, that generates a tvuna of Ava, that generates an ava of rish be'esh, and that the Alter Rebbe says that's merely that's very nice, but that is just the surface. That's the chitzenius, the superficial or external level of the neshama, of the heart, of we're using the word heart as a metaphor. It means the external love that's generated in the heart, which is symbolic of the love and the emotion, that external love that the neshama is experiencing, and therefore gets us to experience it as well. That's chitzenius halev. Remember, we brought the pasuk that says in the Dor Hashem Lechoma Libi that the heart is saying Bakshu Ponai, search for my pnimius. So he says, well, there's a pnimius and there's a chitzenius. First, let's identify what the chitzenius is. So the chitzenius is a passionate relationship, a passionate love to the Eibishter, which is born out of simple one word, meditation. Meditation sounds very fancy. It means simply from understanding Elikos, learning and understanding, and that leads to appreciating, and that leads to love. The more one understands and appreciates, the greater that love will be, and it can even lead to a passionate love, kirish be'esh, resembling flashes of fire. All of that is in the category of chitzenius halev. What's pnimius halev then? Pnimius halev, the pnimius of the heart, is hanakuda shebepnimius halev umkadelibo. Remember, the heart we're saying is that seat of love. So there's the love which is acquired as a result of our comprehension and our understanding, or in the words that he uses here, using our bina and das. And then there's another type of love, which is not acquired by us comprehending anything. Or rather, he's going to tell us it's there, innate, in every Jewish heart. It is that nekuda that that innermost nekuda means a point. Others call it a spark. Others call it a pintelayid. It's that nekuda that's there in the pnimius of a leiv, in the inner part of the heart, and in the depth of the heart. And this is not something that is acquired through seichel. This is not something that's acquired through an intellectual pursuit, like chitzenius halev, the love which is born from an intellectual pursuit. Rather, this is something which is Pnimius Alev and Umka Deliba Shehila Maila Maila Mibchinas Hadas Vatuna. Far higher, Maila Maila, much, much higher than what can be achieved through Das and Tvuna. Far higher than what can be achieved through what a person is able to be mizbeinen, to meditate in his heart in the greatness of Hashem. This is a level of love which is far greater and higher than the love which can be achieved by one's own efforts. In other words, this is something that's given to us. If we wouldn't have, if it's not given to us, we'll never be able to get this Pnimius Alev. The Pnimius Alev is a gift that the Eibishter gives to us. This level of Ava of Pnimius Alev. What's the proof? Alter Rebbe always brings a proof text. As it is written, Mimam Akim Kersicha Hashem. Right? That from the depths I call out to you, Eibishter. So the Alter Rebbe says there's a simple. We know that there's a simple meaning of Mimam Akim Kersicha Hashem means calling out to the Eibishter from a deep, low place. So we say this chapter Kuf Lamed every day in Asher Simei Tshuva after Yishtabach. There's a halacha that the chazan has to be standing lower than the rest of the congregation because it has to be Mimam Akim Kersicha Hashem. Have you ever been to Prague? Did I tell this last week? Was it? Oh, I said it there, right? In Prague. How did we get onto it last week? I don't remember. Right? I did, right? Mimam Akim, from the depths. That's the simple meaning, Mimam Akim. When a person feels low, and I say it's make tshuva, but we're doing tshuva, so we're calling the Eibishter from the depths when we come face to face with ourselves and we realize what we've done, may have done wrong. So we feel low and we want to do tshuva. So we call out to the Eibishter. Hence, that's a chapter of Tehillim that we say in Asher Simei Tshuva. The Alter Rebbe says there's a deeper meaning to that, and that is mimamakim mi'umka deliba, from the depths of the heart, and depths over here is in the plural, because there are many different levels of depths, more and more deeper. That's the pnimius of the leiv. And for that pnimius of the leiv, there's a whole different type, a different level of ava to the Eibishter. As he said earlier, as he just said the previous line, not something that we are capable of achieving ourselves through our tevuna, through our understanding, but rather it's something which is given to us as a gift from above. He gives an example. For example, the parentheses, yeah? Just as you take regular mundane matters, milid alma, worldly matters. There's sometimes something which is very big, ma'id, double ma'id, something that's extremely important. It's something that's so important that the whole chayas of a person, the whole energy and vitality of a person hinges on it, is dependent on it. It's so important and relevant in a person's life that it touches the nekudas primis alev. It touches him as far as the innermost point of the heart. The nekudas primis alev, including, so deep, including on all the way to the primis alev and the primis alev. It's such an important thing, such a critical thing. It's so important and so critical that it sometimes causes a person to do certain actions, and to say or to speak certain words, to say things or do things or say things without any das whatsoever, without any reason. Because it touches the very essence of everything. It goes beyond logic, it goes beyond reason, that people behave in a way which is beyond logic and reason, because it's something which is so vital and so sensitive. That's an example, he says. That's the way it works in this world. Something that's really, really important to a person, the person will react in a way which not necessarily has to make sense. The more important that something is, the deeper the reaction will be. The Rebbe once told a story by Fabrengen of the Chofetz Chaim. Remind me if I told you this story as well. That there was the government in Poland, as happened and still happens today, governments like to interfere in the Jewish system of education and tell us how to educate our children. We've been doing it for longer than them, for thousands of years, but they still like to interfere, and the Jewish education is not good enough, and you have to have a lot of secular. It still happens today. So in those days, they used to fight it. Today, everyone goes along with it, unfortunately. In those days, they knew what's important. So the Chavetz Chaim sent a delegation to wherever it was, Warsaw, I don't know where it was, and to go and deal with it. And they came back, and unfortunately, they failed. They were not successful in doing what they wanted to achieve. So the Chavetz Chaim asked them, "Did you try this? Did you try that?" Yeah, we tried this. We tried everything. And the Chavetz Chaim says, and here the Rebbe shouted, the whole 770 shook. The Rebbe shouted out in the words of the Chavetz Chaim, "Hast du gechalesht?" Did you faint? Did you pass out? In other words, did this bother you so much that you fainted? Or was it just, I sent you on a mission and you tried your best, and coming back, hello, Rabbi, we tried our best and we weren't successful? Was it negea? Did it touch your pnimius halev? Did it touch the very depths of your heart? If it did, you would have fainted. That would have been an argument to them when they see how important it is to you. That it's so negea, it's so important and so critical that you physically fainted, you passed out because it's so bad. This is an example what he's saying over here, that when it comes to Mili da Alma, let's read that again, this parentheses. There are sometimes there's something very, very important. That one's entire life, vitality, is dependent, is hinging on it. And v'negea, it touches till nekudas pnimius halev. It touches till the essence of the heart, v'ad bichlal, including the essence of the heart. And therefore, because it's so important and so sensitive, it causes the person at times to do things, to say things, which don't make any sense. But because it's so relevant, it's so important, that's what the person reacts. That's how a person reacts, because it's so vital. So that's the example that he gives. The same thing he says is over here in the Nekudas Halev, in what the Nekudas Halev, this pintele, this divine spark that we have in us in the relationship with the Eibishter, says. This corresponds to this. This example corresponds. The same thing exactly, mamash precisely, is is in the service of the heart. That I love, that the Yid's love for the Eibishter can be so great that it touches one's essence of the heart, and that goes beyond logic. In other words, it's an expression or a level of relationship with the Eibishter which doesn't have to make sense. Which, as we know, as we'll see, there are some people who their relation with the Eibishter because it makes sense. And then there are people who never learned any Torah, never anything, but yet there's still a connection. Because where does that connection come from? That connection is what we call that pinteliyid. That's not something that can be acquired or that can be developed or earned. That's something that's naturally there. Again, if you refer back to the earlier chapters of Tanya, Yud Zayin, Yud Ches, Yud Tes, over there, the Alter Rebbe is speaking about the different, generally speaking, two levels of love that we have for the Eibishter, one which is born out of meditation, and the other which is a natural love that we have. Over there, he speaks about it at length. And so why is this? The same thing is in Avedas, is in the service of the heart. This means because this nekudas pnimius halev, this deep inner part of the heart, is much higher than the level of das, which is the superficial part of the heart. It's a different type of love. In fact, he says it's a much higher level of love than the love which disperses from the das to the midas, which are born from the Chabad. Kenei das is known. Meaning, he's referring to here what we're familiar with, the regular process, that there's the comprehension that goes on in the mind, the Chabad, and from that it gives birth to the midas, and from the midas, and then from the of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, and from there it disperses throughout the other midas and affects the person. That's the regular standard process of how things work. He's saying that this Nekudas Halev is Lamaila, much higher than the regular process. It's a different type of thing completely. It's something else
Remy,
completely.
I can ask them. Surely it depends on what is, like, everybody has it within them somewhere, depending on what they have to deal with. Like, surely it's there with everybody, but it needs something to touch that level which is in them to bring it out.
Okay, we're not up to that yet. Yeah, that's
Oh,
true. We're not up to that yet. Yeah, so where is it? Why don't we see it? Okay, we'll get to that soon, in a few minutes. He's going to start dealing with that. But first, he's explaining to us what Panemius and what Chetzenius Alev. So Chetzenius Alev is a love which we generate by our understanding and comprehension, which by definition means, to use the terms that we had last week, and we did it in Iggeres Hakodesh as well, everybody according to one's own capability, relative to what we're capable, to what we use. We had the term that Alter Rebbe used in the Iggeres Hakodesh, according to one's intellectual capacity. Okay, so every one of us, depending on what we're capable of understanding of a lakus, will generate a corresponding level of love. But here we're talking about the Nekudas Pnimis Alev, which is much higher than the process, than the love which is generated from the process of Chabad into Midas. Keneda, as is known. Rather, what is it? This Pnimius of the heart is a ha'ora, is a glimmer or a radiation from what's called Chochma Elyena, supernal or supreme Chochma, which is the Eibishter Shem, which is higher than Bina and Das. We're talking here about, comes from the Chochma of the Eibishter, which is higher than our self-generated Bina and Das. Bina and Das meaning our minds, our understanding. So it's Raki Bchinas Ha'oras Chochma Elyena Shelamayla Bina Vadas, and in this Chochma Elyena V'Melubosh V'Ganos Ein Hashem Mamash. In there is Melubosh is enclosed and Ganos is concealed, the actual light of Hashem. So in other words, this Pnimius Alev, this Nekuda, this Pintele, this spark, however you want to call it, where does it come from? It comes from the level of Chochma Elyena, from the Eibishter himself. Koshikosov, as it is written, again, the Alter Rebbe always brings a pasuk that alludes to this. Koshikosov Hashem b'chochma. Pasuk says Hashem b'chochma yosada ta'oretz. It's pasuk in Mishlei. That with chochma you founded the earth. Yosada to yesod, foundation. But the Alter Rebbe just quotes the first part because that's what's relevant. Hashem is b'chochma. By wisdom, with chochma is Hashem. That the Eibishter is what? The Eibishter is in chochma. And it is that Chochma that we have, this piece of Eibishter, this Pnimius Alev, this Nekuda. What is it? Here we have the word spark already. This is, he means, not just this is, but this very much is, precisely is. This is precisely the spark of a Lakus that there is within the nefesh of every Yid. Okay. So now, therefore, the question is, since all this comes from the Eibishter and from Chochma of the Eibishter, then why don't we all have this level of Ava? Why don't we experience it every day, this intense level of Ava, Kiddush Be'esh? Right? That's what you were saying. So he says this, the reason that not every person is able to merit this level of service of Avedas Halev, of service of the heart, to have this Pnimius Halev revealed, La'Avedas Shebelev Mu'umka Deliba, to be able to experience this Avedas Shebelev from the depths of the heart, B'Pchinas, top of the page, B'Pchinas Pnimius, that I should be able to have this level of intense love of the Eibishter in a Pnimius, meaning Pnimius within me, that I should be able to internalize it. It's Pnimius of my neshama, but that I should be able to bring it into my Pnimius, and it should become a reality in my life. Why don't we experience this? Why doesn't everyone experience this? So the reason is, Hainu Lefi, this is because Shebchina Zu Hietzli B'Pchinas Golus V'Shivya. This is because we all have it, but it's in Golus. It's there, but it's an exile within us. We'll soon see who created this exile. It's in Golos and it's a Shivya. It's a captive. It's in captivity. Right? We quoted at the beginning. He mentioned the pasuk. V'shaveh ha'bitzdaka. Who is it? Now he's going to tell. Now we understand who the captives are that are redeemed through tzedakah. The captive is this Pnimius Alev. It's there. We all have it, but it's in Golos and it's in Shivya. And what is it? The Pchinas Golos Hashchina Mamash. This is actually the situation or the state of the Golos. This is when we say about Golos of the Shechina. This is the Golos of the Shechina, not just in the world, the Golos of the Shechina that's within me. That this level of Chochma Yena that he said earlier, which is the Pnimius of our Neshamas, which over there's a deep connection, deeper and more profound than any level of connection we can achieve on our own, is in Golos. And that's the Shechina. That's one of the meanings of Golos of Shechina. Because why is it the Golos of the Shechina? That's a big thing already. Kihi, because again, kihi, whenever he doubles the word, it means he's, this is very real. Kihi b'chinas nitzutz elikus b'nafshei elikis. Because this is the nitzutz elikus, this is the godly spark that is within one's nefesh elikis, and that spark is in Golos. And if the spark is in Golos, then the Shechina is in Golos. If the spark is not able to affect the person and awaken the person to this intense level of love, then it means there's only one reason why it's not functioning, and that's because its hands are tied. So it's in captivity. It's in Golos. It's a shivya. What causes this Golos? The Sibas HaGolos, who Maimed Azal. The cause of the Golos of this, he was not talking about the Golos of the people. We're talking here about the Golos of this Nitzutz Eliki, of this divine spark. The cause of this Golos is Maimed Azal, is like Maimed Azal. What does Azal say? Golu Lubovel Shchina Imon. So the Gemara says an interesting statement that in simple meaning is that when the Jewish people Golu exiled into Bavel, so the Shechina went with them. What does Bavel mean? He's talking here about the Shechina. Now we're saying that the Shechina in our context over here in our conversation this morning, the Shechina is talking about the nitzutz of the neshama. So when they went into Golos to Bavel, the nitzutz of the neshama went into Golos. Shechina means the nitzutz. What's Bavel mean? Why is Bavel called Bavel? Anybody know? Bavel means, it comes from the word, the sheresh is bolal, or bol, which means to mix together, mixed up, right? Where did Bavel come from? Remember? Tower of Bavel, Migdal Bavel, right? What was Migdal Bavel? Over there, that the Eibishter mixed up, bolal, he mixed up all of their languages. So Bavel is a state of mixing up and everything, up and down, right and left. There's no losing one's bearings. That's what Golos is. No clarity is what Golos is. Before Golos, there was clarity. We knew what's good, we knew what's bad. There was a likus, and there was klipa, and it was very clear. Confusion means Bavel. And when there's confusion, there's Golos. And as he explains, the Hainu, this means, this is so, because Shehil Bishprinas Pnimius Nekudas Levavoy, because the Eibishter, or the person, has taken, I think it's talking here about the person, Hil Bishprinas Pnimius Nekudas Levavoy, the person has taken his Nekudas Pnimius Alev, this deep part of the heart, this essence, this spark, and he enclosed it in what? In the Zelu Umazeh. Instead of it allowing his, remember we said earlier, that's the passion. Instead of allowing for this passion to be used for Lakus, he enclosed his passionate side into the Zelu Mazeh, into the other side, into the counterpart of Kedusha. Which is what? The other side, otherwise known as the Sitra Achara, means the other side, or here he uses the term Zelu Mazeh, right? Perik Vov in Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe starts to introduce the Nefesh Abamis, what does he say? Right? Perik Beis, he tells us about the Nefesh Elikis, Beis Gimel Dalet and Hey. And then in Vov he says, V'zelu Umazeh, corresponding one opposite the other is the Nefesh Abamis with the same things, and he says it has the 10 powers as well. and so on. So Zelu Umazeh is this expression, one opposite the other. And in our terms, we're talking about there's a side of Kedusha, and there's the other side. So we have this Nekuda, this Nitzutz, this spark, this Pintelayid. So why don't we experience it? He says, because Golul above it. Because we allowed for confusion. What do we confusion? To mix. What do we mean we mix? So he says, because he took this, the person, the Jew, took this Pnimius Alev, this Nekudas Alev, and he enclosed it in the Zelu Umazeh, in the other side. And in practical terms, what does that mean? This means Bilavushin Tseim de Mili Alma, in the dirty garments, the filthy garments of Mili Alma, of mundane matters. And worse, the Taivas Elam Haza, and worldly Taivas, worldly desires. Glat kosher, by the way. I'm not talking here about, he didn't mention Chas v'sholem, eating McDonald's, or Chil Shabbos, or things which, of course, we would never do. The Alter Rebbe is talking here to good Jews, but who have allowed for the nitzutz to become enclosed in levushim tzeim, in dirty, soiled garments of milid alma, worldly, mundane matters, and that became my passion. The Taivas Elam Haza, and all of the worldly desires. Hanikra b'shem Bovel. All of this is known as Bovel. And as a result of that, the person has banished his nitzutz eliki, this godly spark. He has banished it and put it into a golos, into the golos of his milid alma and Taivas Elam Haza. That's why I say it's glat kosher, it's super glat kosher. But we're talking here about what? That he's taken his passion and his enthusiasm, and it went into that. And when one lives a life where one's life is only, I mean, it's not a Fabrengen, but these lines would be discussed at length at a Fabrengen, that when we allow ourselves, this is the balance that Chassidus teaches us. We're not looking to live a frugal life of nothing. That's not what we're looking for. On the other hand, we have to be very careful not to allow ourselves to fall into this tremendous trap of Elam Haza and the Gashmis of Elam Haza, which, as the world goes on and more and further in history, it's becoming more and more exciting. And for Afruma Yid, the facilities for all of these pleasures of the world are becoming more and more accessible. So this is Bovel. All of that is Bovel. In other words, you would have done this much earlier in Tanya. It's not that the glat kosher steak is Bovel. It's the passion and the excitement that the person has for it. Sometimes a person has to eat. So you have to eat. Of course you have to eat. But it's the passion and the excitement, it's the enthusiasm in it. This is what he's talking about over here, that one has taken one's excitement and passion, which is the characteristic of Pnimius Alev, and instead of having the passion and excitement for Lekus, it's for Gashmis, it's for Taivas Elam Haza, it's for Milid Alma. That already is Bovel, that's already a confusion, and that is Golus of the Shechina. And the Alter Rebbe gives us here an example of what it means with a posek. This is what we refer to as V'hibchinas Orlo Habachasa El Bris. This is what he refers to as this foreskin, which covers over the bris. What does that mean? So we know that there's a baby boy is born and 8 days old. Then the bris that we have with the baby is a very physical thing where the foreskin has to be removed. But we have a pasuk later on in Chumash Dvarim in Pashas Ekev, I think it is. I don't remember. The David says, "There will come a time Maltius Orlas Levavchem, that I will circumcise the orla, the foreskin of your heart." What does that mean? So obviously it's not a physical thing. The heart doesn't have a foreskin. What it means, it's a metaphoric idea that there are certain things. What's the foreskin is something that covers over and blocks. The foreskin of the heart means it blocks and conceals the Pnimius Alev from expressing herself. It blocks, it conceals this innate love that a Yid has for the Eibishter from expressing itself. So the question was asked earlier, what generates, what brings it out? So sometimes there are events and experiences, usually sad and tragic, that reveal and remove the foreskin. That's true. But here we're talking about what is it? What is the cause for this? This is when we take our Pnimis Alev and allow it to become enclosed in the Zela Umazeh. And what is it? This is what we consider the foreskin, the Bechina, the level of Orla, the foreskin, Amachasa, Abris, and the Kudas Pnimis Alev. It covers over the covenant that we have with the Eibishter, and over the Nakuda HaPnimis Shebalev, and over this deep Nakuda, this pintele that there is in the heart. So we created this Golos. There's the Golos that the Eibishter created. Fine, he's got to deal with that. We can help him, obviously. But then there's the self-imposed Golos that we have done to ourselves. That creates this foreskin over our heart. And regarding this, it says, this is the meaning of this pasuk, that you shall umaltem, you shall mal, you shall circumcise es orlas levavchem, the foreskin of your heart. To get rid of this blockage that we have, which doesn't allow for the Pnimius Alev to reveal itself and express itself in my daily life. And if it's not revealing itself and expressing itself, it's because there's a blockage. So I got to remove that blockage. That blockage is used, the euphemism, the metaphor of Orlas Alev, the foreskin of the heart. Now it gets technical because it's very relevant. Vini b'mila, when it comes to the physical mila, yeshnei pchines. There's two levels. There's mila and there's priya. There's actual cutting of the foreskin, and then, like with every skin, in laws of Sefer Torah, there's different types of animal hide. So there's the animal hide is cut. There's two layers: the part which is on the outside and the part which is on the inside. So there's dinim, what can be used for Sefer Torah, what can be used for tefillin and mezuzahs. Some of the inside, some of the outside, and the inside of the outside, right? But they can normally be spread apart, pulled apart. So the same thing happens at a bris milah. The male will tell you, so there's the milah where he cuts it off, and then there's a thin membrane which has to be priya, which has to be parted. So he says, there's two stages. There's milah, the actual cutting of the foreskin, and then there's priya, which is uncovering and removing that membrane, which refers to shehein orla gaso v'klipa daka. One is the coarse orla, the coarse foreskin, and the other is the klipa daka, is the thin membrane. Just as it is physically, the same thing is in the heart, in the foreskin of the heart. In other words, the foreskin of the heart is not a physical thing, right? But there exists two levels in this foreskin of the heart. What's the foreskin of the heart, we said? That's the golus of our Pnimius Alev. There are two levels of this golus of Pnimius Alev. What is the golus? We said it's the taivas. It's when one allows oneself to become sunk into the taivas of Elam Hazah, we said. So in the taivas, there's two levels. There's taivas gases, there are more coarse and mundane taivas, and then there are taivas dakes, more edel, refined, subtle taivas, corresponding to the two types of foreskin, two levels in the foreskin. So corresponding to that, there's mila, mila upriya. And therefore, these two types of orlas alev require mila and priya. So the pasuk says, "Umol Hashem Elokecha." The pasuk doesn't say about priya. It says, "Umol v'loy para." Sorry, the din is. Sorry, forget that. What I just said. So there needs to be the removal of the foreskin of the heart. Foreskin has two levels: mila and priya. And the din is that if a male in a physical bris, umol v'loy para, the din is that if someone performed mila, the circumcision, without priya, without uncovering and moving this membrane, it's considered as if it's not a kosher bris if there's no priya. This is part of the process of the ceremony of the bris milah. Umol v'loy para kilu loy mol. how does this translate into what we're talking about to us? We're using an example of bris milah to how we have to remove the foreskin of our heart. So what is the foreskin of the heart? We've identified that the foreskin of the heart is when we allow all of the taivas of Elam Hazeh to take control, and they are the ones that take control of our lives and direct our lives, and therefore our Nekudas Alev is no longer functional in our lives on a daily level, on a daily basis, because the Arlas Alev is blocking. So what do we need to do? We need to remove the Arlas Alev. Now, in the process of removing the Arla, there's two levels, and there needs to be both. Because if one did only the first one, it's not done yet. You need to remove the more subtle membrane as well. How does that apply in our Arlas Alev? Because even if a person is going to do the first part and remove the course, we said Taivas Gases. Taivas Gases is the Mila, Taivas Dakes would be the Priya. Even if one managed to remove one's attraction and yearning and chasing pursuit of the Gases, there still remains the subtle Orla, still remains there. Because ultimately, after all, after all is said and done, Adayin, there still remains Pnimius Alev, the inner part of the heart is Mechusa, is covered Bilavush Sagdak, with a garment, a concealment of this thin sackcloth of Klippa. And therefore, it's B'chinas Golus V'Shivya. It's in a state of Golus, exile, and Shivya, and captivity. Until the spiritual Priya is going to take place. So now, regarding the actual Milah of the Arla of the heart, who does that? So that, we have a pasuk, Maltem es Arlas Levavchem. That the Eibishter says clearly in the pasuk, later on in Chumash Dvarim, that he gave us the job to do. The Eibishter says, Maltem, and you shall remove Arlas Levavchem, the foreskin of the heart. That he left up to us, every single Yid, that we're capable of doing ourselves. We're capable of working on ourselves, that we should no longer pursue all of the materialism of the world. That's we're very well capable of doing ourselves. However, on the other hand, in order to be able to remove the thin membrane, that already is something which is very difficult for a person. Let's understand this in practical terms. What do we mean? I can change myself, and I'm no longer chasing glatt kosher steaks anymore and a good life. I can control myself, restrain myself, iskafia, and so on. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I've completely, remember again, the Alter Rebbe explains the difference between the tzaddik that these things became repugnant to the tzaddik. Not just he doesn't want them, they're actually disgusting to him. The Alter Rebbe says, in Perigid Aleph in Tanya, I think, we're going to have it in Chita soon. He says the difference between the tzaddik v'tevle and tzaddik v'ralei, right? That not just he doesn't want it anymore, it actually became disgusting to him. We can't achieve the level where a good, whatever piece of Elam Hazeh is disgusting to us that we're going to vomit from it. The Alter Rebbe over there uses the term that he's going to vomit from it, he's going to be very sick from it. That's not something that's expected of us. The best we can do is that we're able to divert our attention, and these things no longer interest me. But I can understand that there's still an exciting thing. It's just for me, I got over it. But it's still exciting, I'm sure it is. That already is the klipa daka, what he's referring to over here. The steak is a good steak, but not for me. I'm not running after steaks anymore, whatever the reason is. But I'm sure it's a good thing. It must be good. Everyone else enjoys it. So he says the dealing with the orla gasa, that we're capable of doing. That's the very thick skin, the thick foreskin, very obvious, that we can deal with. But achlahosera klipa hadaka, in order to be able to remove the thin klipa, zeu dover hakosha la'adam. This is already something which is very difficult. Oh, not very. It says this is something that's very difficult for the person to achieve. And regarding that, it says, that is what the pasuk that I quoted earlier from Parshas Eikev is talking about in the future. It's referring to the times of Mashiach. That then Hashem will come and remove that foreskin. That's already the Eibishter has to do. So we have two psukim here. We have Umaltem es arlas levavchem, where the Eibishter tells us, you shall remove the foreskin of your heart. And then we have that the Eibishter is going to remove the foreskin of the heart. So which one is it? Because there's two parts in the process of Milah. There's Milah Priya. There's the Taiva Gasa and the Daka. There's the thicker one and the thinner one in the Taivas. And we have to do what we have to do. And in the future, the Eibishter will already take that one away from us. Etc. So that what? And he says clear in the pasuk what's going to happen when he removes that thin membrane. So that we will then be able to have a proper and full love of the Eibishter, as full and proper love as is expressed in with all of your heart and with all of your soul, with all of your soul, which means leman chayecha, for the sake of your life. Kloimar says that's the pasuk. Kloimar, this means leman. Because ki Hashem levado hu kol chayecha mamash. Because the Eibishter alone, He is kol chayecha. He is the entirety of your life. So when will we be able to fully be able to experience this idea, this notion that the Eibishter is ki hu chayecha, He is the entirety of your life? That's going to be when this foreskin is removed. So the majority of the problem is self-imposed, and there's a part of it which we can't do anything about it. That's already part of the condition that we have, that the Eibishter put us down into this world, and therefore that has to wait until the Eibishter comes and removes that foreskin, that concealment of the heart. But the majority of the problem of the concealment of the heart is self-imposed. It's up to us to be able, well, usually it's not us, it's usually our mothers who did it to us, who brought us up in a way, especially in the modern world where everything has to be nice and good and comfortable, which of course is the job of a Yiddish mama, which is very good. But the long-term damage is already up to us to be able to climb out of it. For them, to be able to climb out of this. It's done with very well intentions. We're not going to start doing iskafia with children, and you give children ice cream. Of course, I'm not criticizing Chas v'Shalom any Yiddish mothers, but especially when this is a class of Yiddish mothers. Right? The point is that we become accustomed to a particular Gashmi way of life. And our parents tried always, as is the way of parents, to try their best. And then what's meant to happen is that when we grow older, we're meant to mature and try and do what we can not to take the physical life so seriously. So that we should allow for the Pnimius Halev to be able to express herself and to reveal itself. Not in a situation of tragedy, persecution, or these type of things, which throughout history, that's when the Pnimius Halev was revealed, right? That's when the Pnimius Halev is revealed, when the Jew is ready to die as a Jew. We have to see to it that you should live as Jews, not to die as Jews. To live as a Jew means to be able to find a way to allow the Pnimius Halev to be able to reveal herself, so that I should be able to have not just the Pnimius Halev, it should affect me to some degree, the passion and excitement, the avo to the Eibishter, Kiddush Be'esh, even like a fiery flame. So that is within our capability. That is the klipa gasa. That is what we're capable of doing. This is why that's why this love, the love that comes after the milah, after the removal of the foreskin, this love is mumka deliba. Min the kudas pnimius halev kanal, from the very depths of one's heart. And that's, as we said earlier, it's something which is a level which is higher, higher than das, meaning it's a level of love which is higher than what we are capable of loving as through our efforts of das. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe says an interesting play on words. The Gemara says that when Mashiach will come, it will be behesach hadas. Now, the normal translation of behesach hadas is when we're unaware, we're not paying attention, we're not looking. this gives a whole new depth to that expression. That's why Mashiach is going to come unawares, but it means behesach hadas. It's nothing to do with das. The revelation of the Pnimius Alev that's going to happen when Mashiach comes, when the Eibishter removes this fine foreskin, is going to be a level of Ava, which is hesach hadas, which is higher than das. It's nothing to do with das. Meaning it has nothing to do, it's not a product of our effort of intellectual understanding of Eibishter. What is it? This is the manifestation, the gilui, the revelation of Nekuda Pnimis, this innermost point, Haklalis, which is universal, Bechlal, Klalos, for all of Yidden, as opposed to the Ava, which is dependent on each individual's understanding. And likewise, and so too, the exiting, the emergence of the Shechina, the general Shechina, not just the Shechina which is in the Nitzos, which is in Golus in me, but also the more overall Shechina, that Shechina should exit, should emerge from the Golus and the captivity, forever. Just as the individual Shechina will be redeemed, their individual captive, which is the Shechina, will be redeemed when the Eibishter is Mal, when he's going to perform his part of the Milah. So too it will be the general Shechina will also become redeemed then. But the main part of the redemption of our Shechina, of our spark within us, that requires our effort for us to circumcise our hearts. Any questions?
Can I just ask you, yeah, if we don't do the first bit ourselves, the bit we're capable of, the second thin layer that Hakodesh Baruch Hu is going to do when Mashiach comes, that's not going to happen for individuals, or is it dependent, or the general Shekhinah, is that dependent on everybody doing their own work themselves to take away this